WNST. NST, big boxes of them left from 2006. They do have the Take Back the Birds on the back, which is kind of cool. So if you want shirts, they're free. We'll be at Costas Eating Crabs, crab cakes, and beer on Thursday night, talking about the days of Stanley Cup championships and back in the day when Barry Trotz was the coach of the Washington Capitals. Ed Frankovic has been our Caps historian from the beginning of time. Literally, this is on August the 3rd, not only my mother's birthday, my cat's birthday, but also the 20th anniversary of WNST. This guy has been here from the very beginning, after the Caps in their ugly blue St. Louis Blues jerseys, sponsored by Susan O'Malley, lost the Stanley Cup final in 4 games. And 20 years later, they won the Stanley Cup, and Ed and I were there to experience most of the ride. And now, I guess 6 days after a parade, Barry Trotz has exited stage left. And, Ed, I can't say that we're shocked. I mean, you, me, Ted, insiders, most of the NBC Washington crew, no one is shocked by this because they were around this. And I don't think that Barry was truly happy inside the cockpit there. I don't think Barry felt like he was respected or treated well there.
I think that's accurate. I still thought they would work it out, and I thought Todd Reardon would be the one moving on, and they would realize the importance of Barry Trotz and what he's done to the culture and the organization in 4 years. I know he's very well respected by the players, and I know the Capitals are historically frugal when it comes to paying coaches. There's no doubt about it.
I called it cheap, but you can call it frugal if you wish. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, either word's fine, but he's in the bottom third of the coaches. Kevin Weeks on NHL Network pointed that out last week when I was watching and said his next deal should start at least with a 4 at the beginning. And reportedly, according to Brian McClellan, Barry wanted 5 years at $5 million. The Capitals weren't willing to do that. And this whole clause about winning the Cup, we just found out about. Nobody really knew about that. Obviously, these contracts are kept very secretive. Even that clause kept Trotz around $2 million. The New York Rangers just hired a guy out of college, David Quinn, for $2.4 million a year. I mean, that's kind of an insult. I think the Capitals.
Well, the part of it is, Ed, and I would say this to you, that had we known sitting in front of Barry at every press conference that by winning the Stanley Cup he would enact a contract that would punish him, is kind of crazy, right? I mean, it was a crazy negotiation. His agent and him, and even on the Cap side, I don't know what the upside of that was. Like, you're going to come in here and win a Stanley Cup with Alex Ovechkin, and we're going to tack 2 more years on at a low pay. That's kind of shocking to me that Barry accepted that as terms, or that he thought he would be as happy. I mean, I remember when Barry got this job, he thought he was going to be very, very happy. And I think you and I thought, well, he's going to be the coach of the Caps for the next 8 or 10 years, especially if he wins a cup. They'll keep him around because they need to have that, because they have not been good at hiring coaches here. Let's be honest, right?
No, and it's always been about the money. The money was into the general manager with George McPhee. He was making a lot of money, so they had to hire on the cheap. That's why every time they hired a coach, they didn't hire an experienced coach. The only one they had to experience under the McVie era was Ron Wilson, but George didn't hire him. You know, they were brought in at the same time. And when Barry negotiated this contract, the landscape for coaching was a lot different. I mean, this was before Mike Babcock got his big deal with Toronto. It was before Joel Quenneville got his big deal with Chicago. Those were both $6 million a year. It was before Claude Julien signed a 5-year, $25 million deal with the Montreal Canadiens. The landscape has completely changed since he signed that contract. At the time, you know, $2 million was a good salary for a coach, and Barry was getting $1.5 million. But everything's gone up while he's done nothing but win. 2 President's Trophy, Stanley Cup trophy. I look at what Peter Laviolette's making in Nashville, who has a Stanley Cup, and he signed his deal. You got to remember, he signed his deal before Trotz signed with the Caps. He signed for $2 million there. So the coaching landscape and salaries has definitely changed. Mike Babcock certainly is. Everybody, remember when Steve Spurrier came in with the Redskins at $5 million a year, and Coach Billick was happy about that because he said, "Hey, he just raised my salary. He floated all the boats higher." So I think you know that at the time maybe that looked like a good contract because it'll be about 1.8 or 1.9 or 2, whatever. There's conflicting views on that contract. Would have been good for Trotz at the time. But everything's totally changed, and apparently there was language in the contract where he could walk away from it. The Capitals tried to make a deal. Brian McClellan stated on Monday a term was an issue. They didn't want to give a coach 5 more years because they felt he would be here 9 years, and that would.
I think if they would have come back and said, Trotz, 4 years, $4.5 million a year, take it or leave it. Here's $18 million. I think Trotz would have then said, do I want to be here or do I not? You know what I mean? Like, I think at the current terms, it was very clear Barry didn't want to be there. I mean, it's pretty clear to me they didn't want him around. I mean, I know a lot about business. I've heard both sides. I've seen the quotes come out and whatnot. But if you wanted Barry Trotz to be your coach, it's not that much money we're talking about here in hockey terms and money terms. He didn't want to set the market. He wasn't asking for $7.1 million and a 5-year deal. He was asking for, I'm putting my this is the first time in my life I can market myself as a winner. I've never been anything but a loser in Nashville. It was an expansion team. I was lowly paid. I was always lowly paid. I was happy to have a job. We never had the best resources. We always had an ice spot. We never had an automatic ice maker. We always had to make the ice the hard way, right? I mean, we always had to wash our clothes by hand in Nashville because we couldn't afford washing machines. That's where Nashville was. Then he comes into this situation, takes over the keys to a Rolls Royce and drives it out on the Autobahn, to victory, and they're going to throw him out the side. This is not a good look for Ted. This is not a good look for the organization, and it's certainly not going to be a good look for Ted now, who's responsible for bringing another Stanley Cup to town and is just cheapskated on the coach. If they didn't like Barry, they probably should just say, we had some philosophical differences, and as much as we won, it wasn't the easiest road around here, and Barry would tell you that, and we made the most of the situation. Barry's going to go get paid elsewhere. We have Todd Reirden. Todd Reirden's the guy we want to coach our team. Just say that. Just say that. Just say that. So I don't have to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that they undermined Coach Trotz all year with the whole Todd Reirden thing. I was never a fan of that. And, Reirden's clearly McClellan's guy. And Trotz is taking the bullets from the media and the fans that he's always been the one making the lineup decisions. And, that's just not true. I mean, a lot of these people just don't have they're not fortunate. They don't have some of the inside information we had. I mean, we talked to Coach Trotz in March. I talked to him personally while we had dinner, and he told me 2017 playoffs, it wasn't his initial decision to go with 7D. He said he wanted to play. When Alzner came back from the hand injury, he wanted to put Brooks Orpik on the bench and play Alzner. And Todd Reirden was the one who said, no, I'm not putting Brooks Orpik, I'm not scratching Brooks Orpik. I have a long-standing relationship with this guy. He and I are very close, and you can trace Reirden and Orpik coming here at the same time along with Trotz when McClellan took over. And Reirden just wasn't going to sit Orpik. And Trotz has taken the bullet for that for years. But the truth is that Orpik was in the lineup because they decided to go 7D because Brett Connolly was not playing well. It was his first playoff, so they decided to go 7D. But, the media constantly always beats up Barry Trotz for his lineup decisions, and anybody that's been a head coach knows you delegate those things to the position coach, and then you step in when you have to for the greater good of the team. Trotz would say there were a lot of times where they would come with decisions, I would go with them, but sometimes I'd have to say, no, this is what's better for the overall development of the team, and he'd say, I have to play this guy or that guy. But for the most part, those assistants are making the choices. Scott Murray's picking the goalie. Lane Lambert's deciding on the forwards, and Todd Reirden's deciding on the defensemen. So I know Todd Reirden's a very good defensive coach, and he's coaching the AHL. But the big job of the head coach is you got to manage the assistant coaches. You got to manage the egos of them. You got to manage the egos of the players. You got to deal with the media. It's a completely different situation going from assistant coach to head coach, and they're letting a guy with 19 years experience walk out the door. And I just don't understand that. A guy who's won, like you said, took the Rolls Royce and drove it to the ultimate destination. And at the end of the day, they're walking away from it. And the Capitals are making a lot of money. Forbes had them. Someone sent me a report where Forbes had them making $60 million last year, and they're certainly going to make more because the Capitals are now going to use the Stanley Cup to their marketing ability. They're going to drive prices
Oh,
up.
I saw the 500,000 people out in the out on the mall, and so did Barry Trotz, and thought, well, why am I going to come back here and coach for $1.8 million next year? I've been doing that my whole life, and Barry was always a lowly paid coach. Like, he's never made a lot of money. He doesn't have a lot of money. He didn't get a $50 million deal. He didn't get a $25 million deal on Monday for the Capitals, right? Like, he's going to get probably 4 years and 16 to 20 million somewhere, probably, right? I mean, that'll probably be what happens with him, and that will be, if he gets 16 to 20 million, I don't know that he's made 16 million in his whole career. I probably hasn't, right? I mean, most of those years in Nashville, he was making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, right?
Absolutely. It was, Nashville was run on rubber bands and Scotch tape there for the first several years, and he was definitely the lowest paid coach, and that contributed to his longevity. Let's be honest there. But he also, they didn't spend on players there either. So he was.
But if you're 60 years old and you've never cashed in, and you just won the Stanley Cup, you deserve. Not like Babcock money. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't think you deserve to be treated the way he was treated this week. And obviously it was his call too to say this isn't a good situation for me. The word is they were willing to give him $2 million a year the next 2 years, and then $5 million in the third year. Which would have been a 3-year, $9 million deal.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're exactly right. They just didn't want him as a coach. They want to go with Todd Reardon. They think he's their guy. That's their decision. I think it's a mistake to let a 19-year coach walk out the door like this. I think there's going to be a lot of issues next year. I mean, you've got, you're going in, you're trying to repeat. You got a lot of pressure on you already. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Todd Reardon as his first year as a coach to now have to sit there and have to basically coach against the ghost of Barry Trotz, who won the Stanley Cup. There's going to be a lot of pressure. I think this is a big mistake by the Capitals. I think they should have ponied up the money. I think they're going to make enough money from all these new sources of revenue they're going to get from winning the Stanley Cup. They're letting a massive amount of coaching experience walk out the door, and I just don't agree with the move.
What's his role in all of this, Ed? By the way, Ed Frankovic here. We're talking about the departure of Barry Trotz. As far as what we saw, clearly they had a lot of talent. Clearly they spent to the cap. Clearly they've developed players. And I don't know how much of that you give to Trotz on Kuznetsov, on Orlov, on Vrana, on and on and on and on and on. I mean, clearly when you win the Stanley Cup, if your job as the head coach is to push all the buttons and get the most out of your players, there can be no smudge on Barry Trotz. I mean, and even losing Game 7s to Pittsburgh the last 2 years. I mean, come on. You're losing Game 7 to the eventual Stanley Cup champion, in tight circumstances, in one-goal games, in overtime. When you look at the three ousters of the Caps in the playoffs, you could be a fanboy and be outraged that they lost in the second round of the playoffs in Game 7 every year. But you can also look at it and say, they lost in the second round of the playoffs in Game 7 every year here, and they had some bad luck along the way, and they had injury. They had a lot of things going on, but it wasn't because they had a knucklehead coach who didn't get the most out of this team.
No, that's for sure. I mean, definitely the first year when they lost to the Rangers, that was the President's Trophy winning team. The Rangers had a great team, were heavily favored, and the Capitals took them to, double overtime at Game 7. And then the next year they had a lot of injuries going up against Pittsburgh. They were favored, but again, they didn't have depth at the bottom of the lineup. Alzner was blew his groin out, wasn't right, and there was Orlov and Schmidt's first playoffs, and that's a big factor. And I think you have to give Barry Trotz a lot of credit for the development of the players. I mean, look at Tom Wilson, look at Kuznetsov, look at Orlov. I mean, these guys blossomed under him as head coach, and the previous head coach had Tom Wilson playing 5 minutes a game and fighting. Dmitry Orlov was injured, but Oates wasn't. Actually, Oates coached him. Oates didn't use him effectively either, and Oates had run Braden Holtby pretty much out of here. If it wasn't for Trotz coming in and saying Braden Holtby's my goalie, look how many teams in the league don't have good goalies, and he brings Mitch Korn in with him. He brings Lane Lambert in with him. These guys are experienced coaches, and I don't see Lane or Mitch sticking around after this. I see them landing wherever Barry does, and the question is, will Barry take a year off or will he jump right back in? It's going to be interesting to see. There's only one opening right now with the Islanders. Seattle is not at a point where they're ready to hire a coach.
Well, Seattle just hired Tippett, another former Baltimore skipjack, by the way, Dave Tippett, and so was Joe Quenneville, by the way. If you're keeping track of how many geniuses came through the skipjacks in the late '80s that I saw when they were at the late ends of their 30-something-year-old AHL slapshot turn. But yeah, I mean, these other jobs that are out there, I don't know that Barry's really all that concerned. I mean, Barry was showing me pictures of his lake house 4 hours east of Vancouver back in March, and I think he'll just go chill out there, maybe do some TV, whatever. But there will be 6 to 8 jobs that will pop open in the next 12 months, and when that job pops open, he's the first guy in the door, and he's already set the stage that I'm not going to work cheap. So, if they want a guy like Barry, he'll be waiting it out, polishing his ring, and smoking a cigar and having a beer, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's teams that definitely are taking another look, and there's situations where there's talent and they're not performing to the level they're performing. I mean, all along we suspected this could happen. I mean, it wasn't unexpected, but it's still a surprise because I figured when he won, they would find a way to get it done and realize how much he really does mean to this organization. He changed the culture. This culture there was no culture. It was everyone out for themselves before Barry Trotz came in, and he really made them about a team. And that's why they were so successful. And that's how the ironic thing was the best team was the one that had a lot of young guys. And Barry Trotz always gets beaten up for not playing the young guys, which is absolutely ridiculous. We look at all the players. I mean, he started clean in Nashville. You look at all the players he developed in Nashville, all these star defensemen, Ryan Suter, Shea Weber, on and on and on there, Ryan Ellis, Ekholm, and then the players he's developed here in Washington. It's just ridiculous that some people can still get away with saying that he doesn't develop young players or doesn't play young players. They went first 50 games, they played 4 rookies. They beat Penguins in Game 6 with 5 rookies in the lineup. It's ludicrous. I mean, it boggles my mind what people can say and get away with in this day and age. And it not be true.
Well, there was a whole internet movement to fire Barry Trotz in March or late February, whenever that was. I saw that as well. This is where I'm going to play some inside pool, because if I don't tell you my stories, who am I going to tell them to? Obviously, Trotz came out to Michael's Cafe at the end of March and sat with us and made it very clear to me that he realized he was a contract employee. And that's not the way it was in Nashville with his relationship with David Poile in all those years, and that there were things that happened last year that were unsettling to him, and I guess he was almost fired twice. And your point with Orpik and Beagle and who's going to play and who's not going to play. And then there was the part where they won the Stanley Cup, Ed, and I was at the team party, and Trotz's table was in the far back left corner. It took me an hour to find him at the party. And when I went back to the table, I spent the better part of 2.5 hours at his table. I saw zero warmth between him and anyone organization-related. Players, yes. Ovechkin, yes. Backstrom, yes. Tom Wilson, yes. I saw all of that. But I didn't see McClellan and he having a beer together. I didn't see Ted Leonsis and him having a beer together. Then I happened upon them at the end of the parade. Right there in the middle of the mall, and I shared a picture on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and everywhere else on Monday after he was let go, stepped down, resigned. By the way, when I first saw the text, I thought it said resigns, right, with capitals. I didn't realize it was resign, so it took me a minute I was doing radio, but I was there, and McClellan was next to Barry, and Ted Leonsis was next to me. And I didn't sense an iota of warmth between them. Matter of fact, I came home and said to my wife, I'm like, I spent 35 minutes with them in the middle of 500,000 people, with all the players, with all the red, with all the noise and the music and the monuments and the perfect painted blue sky. And it looked to me like they didn't even know each other, any of them. Like that. My observation last Tuesday was, I don't know that Ted Leonsis and Barry Trotz have ever gone out together for 3 hours and talked. I don't know that to be true or not. It certainly didn't seem like there was a lot of relationship, anywhere. And I've known Barry for 30 years, and the reason I know Barry 30 years, as you would point out, is Barry's a relationship guy. He's from a farm in the middle of Manitoba. And 30 years later, I happen to be the guy at the Stanley Cup party on the greatest night of his life because he keeps relationships. It's important to him. His relationship with David Poile was important to him. His relationship in Nashville. Every relationship he ever had in Nashville. Like, they would love to bring him back to Nashville. You know what I mean? Like, so I find all of it to be a little cold on the Capital side. And I hope they don't regret this as an organization, but I feel like they will.
I put the blame on their side as well. And like you said, you talk about the relationships. That night we had them here, and every time we had them out at Michael's Cafe, the former Skipjack employees would come out. And specifically this year, a lot of them didn't get there till later. You know, Margaret and
Sherry,
yep, and the Petties. They all came later, and Trotz, he had a long drive back to Virginia. What did he do? He sat there and drank a beer. I actually left before everybody else did because, Trotz wanted to hang out with his old Baltimore crew. I mean, it's just, he is a relationship guy. He's a people guy, and that's definitely something clearly happened along the way. These GMs, they get in their positions and they want to hire their own guys. Maybe that's the way it is. Frankly, I'm quite surprised that Leonsis and Trotz didn't bond more because you think about everything Barry Trotz does with the community and the bosom buddies and all those type of things. You would think Ted Leonsis, who's done a lot with charity, would be very much behind it. And
this is the only coach that's ever won a championship for Ted, and he just cheapskated him out the door. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he'll win 3 NBA titles, Ted. Maybe he'll win 2 more Stanley Cups with Ovechkin in the next 5 years. Maybe Todd Reardon was the genius here, and Trotz is the village idiot, right? But the only guy you ever had that won, it's like Peter Angelos going back to Davey Johnson. He's the only guy you ever had that won. Buck, okay, fair enough, but when you've got a guy you can win with, you ought to try to make it work, especially when that guy's a good guy, a renowned good guy.
Yeah, it's not like the Mike Keenan situation with New York, where Mike would just
rubbed everybody the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, he wore out his welcome everywhere.
It's a situation, Nestor, with Trotz with the Caps and Keenan with the Rangers, and it's just I just don't understand what happened there. I know the Capitals have always been cheap, the word there, when it comes to coaches. But you look at what's happening with the Wizards. They're paying, the Scott Brooks guy, $7 million a year. I mean, for a franchise. I mean, I know basketball is a different environment. There's different money, but come on, you're not winning a championship with the Wizards. Not with certainly the way the NBA is run, with all these teams being able to load up like Golden State does. It's reminding me more of baseball, the way the Yankees and the Red Sox have the advantage every year. That's why it's so nice.
Again, man, I would say if you're giving Scott Brooks $35 million and you wouldn't give Barry Trotz 16 to 20, then you probably just didn't like Barry Trotz. I mean, I keep going back to that. They didn't like Barry Trotz. I mean, if they liked Barry Trotz, they'd keep him around. They were done with him. That's the story. I don't know that there can be any other story because I don't know that Trotz was looking to run out the door. I don't think he thought it was a great circumstance for him there, but I think he thought it was, well, this is life in the league, but you at least need to pay me like a Stanley Cup champion because I am and because I did. Period.
Yeah, and I think the relationship with the players is the most important thing, and the players certainly bought in and delivered for him.
How many of the players wake up pissed this morning?
I'm curious to see what happens now with these players. I'd be curious to know what Alex Ovechkin thinks. He's not going to say it on record, but I think he and Barry Trotz really worked well together. How's this going to influence a John Carlson or Jay Beagle is a guy that Barry Trotz thought the world of and kept trotting out. And there's reports that the way Trotz deployed Beagle upset the McClellan. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't talked to Brian about that. I just don't think that you could discount that so much. And you're rolling the dice now. Todd Reardon's going from a very different role, and let's be honest, he's going to get the job. I mean, that's the way the Capitals roll. He's going from a very focused on the blue line and tactical job, and now, like I said, he's got to manage all the other assistant coaches. He's got to manage the players, and he's got to manage the media. He's got all those egos, all those drags on his time. Because I haven't talked to Todd Reardon in 4 years while he's been here. I mean, he's an assistant coach. I haven't talked to Lane Lambert. I mean, the only one I really talked to every now and then is Blaine Forsythe, or Mitch Korn's been the one I've talked to more than anything because I see him in the press box. But these coaches are not made available to the media. These assistant coaches are not. So this is going to be a big change for Todd Reardon. He's now got to get up there and be the face of everything. And the one quality about Barry Trotz that was very good was his calming, his ability to be calming with the media and with the team and keep everybody kind of focused and not get too high, not get too low. And you're going from 19 years experience again to a guy who has 0 NHL head coaching experience. I think that is a huge difference, especially coming off a Stanley Cup win.
Ed Frankovic is here. If it was easy, they'd all be doing it. You can follow him, Ed Frankovic, out on Twitter. You can email him anytime, ed@WNST.net. Ed, I think we've torn this up enough for now, and I don't know what the next steps are going to be here, in or out, but I know some Caps fans are happy. Some are outraged. I'm not outraged. I'm also not surprised or shocked. So, and certainly over the weekend, I said to Jenna, we're laying in bed Sunday morning watching the World Cup, and I'm like, man, Trotz, this probably isn't going well. Or maybe they're negotiating and it is going well and they'll have a kumbaya. I said, but something's going to happen quick here. This is it about the pop. That's what I said to her on Sunday. And certainly Monday afternoon it did. Plenty more ahead. We got awards and drafts and all that stuff coming up. Ed, I'll check in with you. We'll be doing a little bit more hockey than usual this summer, I feel, huh?
Yeah, I mean, when you're the champs, you have that. But we also have a lot of things to iron out, especially with John Carlson and now a new coach. And I'm not outraged. I'm disappointed. I just think it's very disappointing, and it certainly diminishes the positive moods we've had for 11 days or whatever since they won the cup. And I don't think it's the right move to do this. But that's the way it is. Business is business, and we'll have to move on.
All right, well, we're rocking the red. I'm still wearing the Stanley Cup champions hats. I have no idea. I don't think Barry Trotz is going to be bringing the Stanley Cup to Baltimore. I'll look into that, Ed. So, I don't
see that happening. I mean, Trotz is going to get his one day with the Cup, and it's going to be in his hometown. You can bet that. It's going to be up to Ted Leonsis to do it now.
Well, and I have his hotline, too, so we'll see how that goes. But I don't agree with this decision, and nor do you. So we'll see how that goes. Ed Frankovic joining us here. You can find him out on Twitter at Ed Frankovic. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live. Wearing my Free the Birds shirt. And by the way, if you want a Free the Birds shirt, I'll be at Costas Inn on Thursday night, giving them away while they last. Limited sizes, one style. I feel like an internet portal on Amazon. I am out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships directly and digitally to your email inbox at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com, where it's still $10 a month as we get these hot days to get in the best shape of your life. Get in, get on the treadmill, watch some television, get in shape, lunk alarm, always judgment-free, and right around the corner, it is Planet Fitness. Maryland Jockey Club and Laurel Racing this weekend down in the beautiful new sports book at Laurel. Get down there. You can get those entries in the front of our morning newspaper as well as on the front page of WNST.net. I am everywhere the internet is served, and we have our breaking news that comes to you first on the WNST text service. When the Orioles deal or don't deal Manny Machado, you'll get it first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colatzos will have plenty to say on Thursday as well about Barry Trotz and the Caps, as well as the weekend. My Dear Orioles series is coming this week, if I can ever sit down and focus on that with all that is going on in the sports world. But I promise you, the Dear Orioles series is coming your way over the next 4 weeks. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.